Searching for a location for your next date? Well, look no further than your local Ikea. Delicious food, and you can see just how compatible you are by your taste and furnishings. They like the God Morgan, but you really rock with the hymness. I don't know if I'm saying any of those right. Today's poor choices is Swedish meatballs, not exactly the Ikea style, but inspired by Ikea. We're gonna make our meatballs from scratch, our gravy from scratch. This is definitely a great New Year's Eve party appetizer. And today's poor choice is some lovely bourbon. While they don't sponsor the show, because who would want to do that? It is going to go along great with our Swedish meatballs. And by the way, there is a Patreon link down in the description on the YouTube channel. $1 a month is all we ask for, and it goes a long way with helping me do all this stupid stuff. Help me help you. First, we'll start with the panade. A panade is a milk and bread paste that's folded into ground meat before shaping into meatloaf and meatballs in our case, or even burgers. The starches in the bread absorb milk to form a gel that coats and lubricates the meat, keeping it moist and tender. See, I can read Wikipedia. I've got some basic white bread here that I'm going to cut into decent sized cubes. This is just going to make it easier for the food processor. You can also use a blender for this. I know a lot of people just go with regular breadcrumbs, but I do really like the texture of using softened bread. Toss it into the food processor till it's nice and fine, and then scoop out about 1.5 cups and place into a bowl. Then pour over 1 cup of half and half, mix it so everything has absorbed the liquid, and then let it hang out for about 10 minutes, and it should look like this, a lovely looking paste. Then I'm going to take half a brown onion and in the same food processor, pulse it till it's nice and finely chopped and minced. My knife is on its last leg, so doing it this way gives me the dicing I need, but you don't have to use a food processor if you don't want to, but definitely get those onion pieces nice and fine. Next, we need to sweat these onions out. There's a lot of moisture in them, and if we just throw them raw into the meat mixture, it'll kind of start to steam and make our meatballs less sexy. So I've just put about a tablespoon or 2 of unsalted butter in a cast iron pan over medium heat, and we just want to work the moisture out of these. Throw a little salt on to help draw out moisture, and I'd say cook them until they're just starting to turn brown like this. Then we'll add those onions to our panade, and on top of that, 1 pound of 80/20 ground beef, and 1 pound of ground pork. Then we'll throw in 1/4 cup of minced fresh parsley, 1 whole egg, and a seasoning mixture of 1.5 teaspoons of salt, half a teaspoon ground ginger, half a teaspoon ground allspice, and half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Get your hands in there, or if you feel like dirtying up some more dishes, you could do this in a stand mixer. But if not, get those hands in there and mix everything till it's nice and evenly distributed and looks really gross like this. Now for the fun tedious part. I'm weighing these out to just over 1 ounce each using a food scale. Fun little trick here to keep the meat from sticking to your hands is dunking them into cold water between every few meatballs. Get them onto a parchment lined baking sheet, and I don't remember how many of these it actually made, but I do remember it made a lot. So I'm opting for baking these today instead of doing them in a pan. So into a preheated 500-degree oven they go for 25 minutes. After 25 minutes, I'll take them out and I'll flip them over. I'm looking to get a good sear on each side. Once you flip them all over as best as you can, pop them back into that same 500-degree oven for about another 10 minutes. Now, while this is happening, we'll make our gravy. The cool thing we could have done if we were to sear these in a pan is we could have used those pan drippings for our gravy, but it's all good. We can still have good fortified beefiness without pan drippings. So in that same pan that we sweated the onions in earlier, we'll go at a medium heat. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of butter, and I believe this was unsalted butter, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and we're going to make a roux. Once we've cooked out all the raw flour and got ourselves a nice little paste, we'll start working in 2 cups of beef broth a little at a time, whisking until it thickens a little, add a little more, whisk some more until we've poured all 2 cups in. For that fortified beefiness I mentioned, we're adding in about a tablespoon of Better Than Bouillon beef base. Whisk that in, then add half a cup of heavy whipping cream and give that a whisk as well, and then we'll let that thicken for a moment. Then I added 2 dashes of Worcestershire sauce and about a teaspoon of Dijon mustard and whisk that in as well. You can taste and see if it needs salt, which I actually forgot and had to add later. I didn't do it on camera, but this is a good time to definitely do that. Meanwhile, the meatballs are done, and look at them. I definitely ate like 5 before I even finished the gravy. Speaking of, the gravy is good to go when you can draw a line on the back of a spoon and have it stay there. If you want a thicker gravy, you could go longer, but I like this consistency. After all, it is going to keep thickening on its own afterwards. So now let's dunk our balls in the gravy, get everything nice and happy together, and then I just let this simmer for about another 5 minutes, still a medium heat, just to let the flavors marry, and that's it. Bam, Swedish meatballs. I topped it with a little parsley for color and devoured this within minutes like the fat ass that I am, but hey, this is Poor Choice's Kitchen. Of course, the poor choice was bourbon, and I had a good time sipping on that. I believe it was Woodford Reserve. Very strong, but very good. And as I mentioned at the top, we do have a Patreon, link in the description. $1 a month is all we ask for because it helps go a long way on this channel. And other than that, Happy New Year to everybody, and I look forward to ruining your diets next month.